the top 12 teams in college football for me and Zach. Zach has his teams up there. You can see them: Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Indiana, Tennessee, SMU, Arizona State, Boise State, Miami. Miami dropping quite a bit in Zach's rankings. And then myself are Oregon, Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Miami, Notre Dame, SMU, or not Miami, sorry, Tennessee, Notre Dame, SMU, Miami, Boise State, and Alabama. Zach, I think I like the Big Ten better than you because I have all my Big Ten teams in the top 5. You only have 2 in the top 5. What are you doing?
Okay. I have them in the top. I have 4 in the top 7. Okay. Don't
7
give
is
me
more
that.
than 5, Zach. 7 is more than 5.
It's
I'm
fair.
surprised you didn't put Ohio State 12th.
I thought about it. I thought about it real hard, but then I'm like, man, it's actually hard to put them 6th based on other teams.
Yeah.
Because here's my struggle with this whole thing is like, who else has 2 top 10 wins?
Not many other teams.
Yeah. Who has a top 3 win? Or it's going to be a top 3 win because Penn State's going to be at least 3 in the next CFP rankings.
Looks like Georgia and Ohio State.
Yeah. And Georgia also beat Tennessee, right? They beat Tennessee by a couple scores. So like Georgia has 2 top 10 wins. Ohio State has 2 top 10 wins. And like nobody else has even in the field, I think, has played 2 top 10 teams, let alone 3.
Yeah, Notre Dame's has a top 20 win. Trying to think off the top of my head. Penn State has a top 25 win, and Illinois should be top 20. I don't know why they're not in the top 20. If I was ranking Illinois, I actually wrote on my thing. I was right. I would rank Illinois 16th personally, but if I was doing a top 25, anyway, we'll stick with the top 12. Tennessee, who'd they beat? They beat
Alabama.
Yeah, so they'd have a top 12 in my rankings.
Yeah.
And then
It's a good
Boise State, I mean, they're kind of in the same situation with Ohio State where they lost really close to Oregon at Oregon. So it's not a win, but it makes you look good that you were able to be that close with them. So yeah. Zach, go ahead and give us your thoughts on your rankings. Kind of go from first to last. If you move somebody substantially, go ahead and note that, and then we'll hit mine for me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start from the bottom. I had a tough time figuring out whether I thought Miami should be ahead of the 3-loss SEC teams, and at the end of the day, I think the SEC teams all have better wins than Miami. But I think the data point of a 24-point win at the Swamp against Florida, people aren't talking about that enough compared to Ole Miss. Like, Ole Miss is out. Like, Ole Miss, they're done. And Lane Kiffin can go cry me a river. Like,
biggest baby in all of college football.
Goodness. You cry and then you lose. Good job.
And then you cry some more.
Yeah. Like, I don't respect it. And Ole Miss lost to that Florida team. DJ Lagway is a good player. He's not worth 24 points, which is exactly what Miami beat Florida by on the road. Now, granted, it was the first game, but I think to punish Miami, everybody's saying Miami's out, and I tend to agree that I think the committee probably will leave them out. But to punish Miami for losing to a 9-3 Syracuse team on the road, like I just don't think that's I don't think that's great, right? Like, Syracuse isn't a bad team, and Kyle McCord's been a good quarterback for them. And so I think Cam Ward deserves to be in the playoff at 10-2. So I've got them there, but I think it's between them and the 3-loss SEC teams for that spot. Boise, I moved them up. I think no, I moved them up one
You
spot.
moved them up one and Arizona State up one.
Arizona State, and yeah, Arizona State. If I'm remembering correctly, I'm pretty sure they depleted Arizona this week.
Oh yeah,
which
like
was
44-7 or something.
which is good. Like Arizona's not great, but like that, I feel like confirmed to me that I think Arizona State's actually a pretty darn good team. That's improving and building. They have a really good running back.
Mm-hmm. It was at Arizona too, 49-7 at Arizona.
Yeah. So like again, Arizona's not great. I know SEC people will be like, they haven't beaten anybody. I don't care. I think
SEC.
Yeah, SMU.
Clemson. Congrats.
Yeah, I think SMU is underrated. So like I have them at 9, but I moved them up 1. Tennessee struggled against Vandy. Like now they pulled away. They did what a good team should do. But again, if you're gonna tell me that I should put a 2-loss team ahead of Indiana, you need to prove to me why. And their best win is Alabama, which is it's a fine win, but they didn't beat them as bad as Oklahoma did.
Right.
Like, so
Alabama is still a 3-loss team.
Yeah. And Tennessee, anybody who's saying Tennessee should be above Ohio State, just throw out any credentials you have.
Yeah.
Because you're wrong. Objectively, you're wrong. And this is from a guy who wants to kick Ohio State out of the playoff right now. But you're just objectively wrong. They don't have better wins. They don't have better losses. Like, sorry, Tennessee.
Yeah, they got blown out at Georgia. Ohio State lost by 1 point to Oregon, who is higher ranked than Georgia. And then they lost at Arkansas, which, can be a little bit better, I suppose, than Ohio State losing at home to Michigan. But I would also say Michigan is a rival of Ohio State with a little bit more extra juice in that game. So I don't punch them as much as maybe I would against a lower level team like Arkansas. But yeah, sorry. Just furthering your point. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just say this too. Like, people want to bring up Tennessee's strength of schedule. Sagarin has Tennessee at 53, Ohio State at 52.
Yeah.
So like every power ranking, every metric would favor Ohio State. FPI, Sagarin, strength of record, they all favor Ohio State. So like Tennessee, the best thing about your resume right now is your coach hasn't cried yet. So good for you. I think
it's funny, Zach. People argue Tennessee over Ohio State. Ohio State has more top 10 wins than Tennessee has ranked wins. Now, Tennessee fans will tell you that NC State and Oklahoma are ranked wins.
LOL.
Woohoo. You beat them when preseason rankings were still a thing, and they were ridiculous. Oklahoma is nowhere near a ranked team. Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just to further that point, Oklahoma is 28th, according to Sagarin, and NC State, let's see. They're ranked below North Dakota State, by the way. They're 59th in Sagarin.
I thought you were going to say
that's who they lost.
Ranked below Kent State.
No. I don't think Purdue.
No, below Kent State.
I was going to say Purdue's not ranked below Kent State.
Oh
my. There you go, John. But yeah, Indiana at 7. I think people are making too much about the schedule for them. They have been dominant. They continue their dominance against a admittedly bad Purdue team, but I think there's something to be said about that. Ohio State 6th. You got to ding them. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to put them anywhere from 4 to 6. I don't think you can actually drop them any lower than that.
Yeah.
Like I just have a hard time figuring out how you drop that because of other teams' flaws. And if you put them below Indiana, it's like, did you watch the Indiana game?
Yeah.
Like it's actually hard to put them below Penn State, but I think you got to honor Penn State's resume and the 1 loss. I think Notre Dame and Georgia, both of them have interesting cases. Notre Dame, their schedule's terrible, right? Like Notre Dame is, again, according to Sagarin, it's 62. They haven't played a top 10 team according to Sagarin, but they're 3-0 in top 30 games. they're actually ranked first in
Hmm.
the Sagarin ratings. I think they're ranked second in FPI. So
Hmm.
like I give some credence to that, and they've just been good. Like I know they struggled a bit with USC, but again, USC is they're loved by the computers. So I'll give Notre Dame the nod purely because of the one loss. And I think they have been dominant. They've controlled every game except for uh, the NIU game, which I think was an aberration.
Right.
Um, Georgia at 4, I think they beat their rival. And to me, I'm like, all right, like, and Georgia has admittedly had a a much more difficult schedule. Like across the board, every computer has it. Now again, it's weighted a bit with the SEC, but I will honor that in Georgia's favor. Penn State 3. I have Texas 2 because of their win over Texas A&M. I think it was at Texas A&M. It was a tough environment. I think that's a good win for them. I was gonna flip them, and then I was like, no, they went on the road and they beat a they beat Texas A&M. So
Yeah.
and then obviously Oregon at 1. But
Yeah.
I'll say this: I think you can flip Penn State Texas. I don't think it's outrageous to do so. I think you could put Ohio State 4 or 5. I don't think it's outrageous to do so. Um, like I think you could put Indiana higher. Um, I I think there's a lot of variation. I just think Ohio State in particular, people want to put them below Tennessee, and if you do that, I just think from every metric you're wrong.
Yeah. You're
And
just stupid if you put them below Tennessee.
yeah, like you just can't. I think the other teams I think have arguments against Ohio State. Tennessee is not one of them.
Tennessee is the stopping point. You cannot put Ohio State. Now the AP poll did, the coaches poll, heck, they put SMU over Ohio State, which
And
is
they're
like,
stupid.
how is that? How are you that stupid? So, but again, those are a situation where you literally have people in the AP poll not ranking Illinois, but they're ranking Colorado. And like, I don't have time to go into all that because it's a top 12 show, not a top 25 show. But like, just look at Colorado's schedule and who they lost to, and then look at Illinois' schedule and then who they beat. And there
Yeah.
are AP poll voters who are ranking Colorado 20th and not ranking Illinois. It like the AP poll is one of the most mind-numbingly stupid things that there is out there. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's move on because I don't need to talk about Colorado and Illinois the entire time in a top 12 show. All right, I'll stop for the top for me. Oregon for me, number 1. Obviously, I don't see how you can not put Oregon number 1 at this point. Penn State number 2. I have Penn State above Texas because Penn State gave Ohio State a better battle than Texas gave to Georgia. Penn State was leading in that game for a little while. Looked like they could possibly run away with it for a little bit, and then Ohio State played some really good football to come back into it, but you had plays being made by Penn State to keep the game closer, keep them in the game on defense. Their biggest issue is they couldn't score on a goal line stand, and if they had scored in that one, that game would have been a whole lot more interesting, and Penn State could have possibly won the game, but they did not, and so I felt like Penn State gave Ohio State a better battle than Texas gave to Georgia. I also moved Texas up quite a bit because of the Texas A&M win. I said it in the last show. If Texas beats Texas A&M, I'm going to give them credit for that. I moved Ohio State down 2 spots for the loss to Michigan because I think rivalry games are different. I think the fact that you lost a rivalry game is a little bit different because of what it means and what all the factors are. And then also, like, as much as we want to go against Michigan for the season they've had, they do have NFL players on that team. This is not your typical, 6-6 team. This is a 7-5 team that has a lot of NFL players on it. Yes, I know Will Johnson didn't play. Yes, I know Coastal Leveland didn't play, but you cannot convince me that Marlon Klein will not be a NFL tight end at some point. You cannot convince me that freshman Logan Hansen will not be an NFL tight end at some point. Like, congrats. Not congrats. Like, yes, it sucks. Your NFL tight end did not play in the game, but congrats. You have NFL tight ends waiting behind him. Like, that's how good Michigan has been at finding tight ends. These weren't necessarily the highest ranked recruits in the world, but Michigan found them,
Mhm.
give them credit for that. And
Yep.
so I didn't drop Ohio State too low because I also thought Ohio State's defense looked like the best, one of the best defense in the nation. It just was unfortunate that Michigan only needed, what was it, like 7 yards in two of their drives to score 10 points. Like, I don't know. I don't know what Ohio State's defense is supposed to do on that. You have a goal line stand, and then two
Yep.
plays later, your offense throws an interception, and then you have to have another goal line stand. Like, I don't know how you're supposed to stop a team on the goal line 8 times.
Yeah.
That's just me. Um, so after that, I have Indiana. I think Indiana has been blowing teams out. I think Indiana has been destroying teams, and Georgia has struggled with the teams that they should destroy. Even though Georgia has the win over Texas, I look at it and I say Georgia has played with their food too much. Look at Georgia Tech, look at Kentucky, look at all these other teams. And I know Georgia Tech's a rivalry game, but Georgia Tech does not have that NFL talent that Michigan does that makes me feel better about them. Georgia Tech should not have been in that game. Yes, it's a rivalry game. You can make it a game for 3 quarters, but Georgia should have pulled ahead in the fourth
Yeah.
quarter. Instead, they were down 21 points at halftime. They didn't score a single point in the first half.
Yeah.
You can't do that. That would not happen to Indiana against a team like Georgia Tech. That would not happen for them. And so I have Indiana ranked above Georgia. I actually dropped Georgia 2 or 3 spots after last week because I said, look, the way they played, yes, they got the win. But I said after that game, no matter what, I'm dropping Georgia because they played a losing game. Now, they did not lose the game, but they played a losing game. And I think
Yep.
that kind of stuff needs to be looked at more. Like Ohio State in the AP poll dropped 6 spots for losing to Michigan by 3
Yep.
points. Georgia gained a spot for beating Georgia Tech by 2 points. Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't make any sense to me. And so therefore and that's at home too. Like they were both at home. It's not like one was at Georgia Tech or something like that. So
Yeah.
down on Georgia a little bit there. Tennessee, Georgia's just a stopping point for them. Tennessee cannot go above Georgia for me. That game,
Yep.
even though it was at Georgia, Georgia beat them handily enough. I cannot rank Tennessee over Georgia at this point. I have Notre Dame 8th. I know the numbers love them. I know all that stuff, but like they beat Texas A&M, but they also beat Texas A&M early in the season when they didn't have their quarterback that's been much better for them this season. I don't
Yeah.
normally factor in that kind of stuff a ton, but in this situation, first game of the season, I look at it a little bit more. And then the NIU loss, like I think you have to be punished for losing bad games. Like I've seen some people say, like let's only judge them by their best wins. Sorry, like I think this is the worst loss of any team in the top 12, and it needs to be reflected in there. I can't put Notre Dame in my top 5 because I don't think you can be a top 5 team and lose to Northern Illinois. Now, if Northern Illinois was like Bowling Green and had blown out, an SEC team and had done all these different things and went to the wire with Penn State, okay, maybe I'll be a little more forgiving. Northern Illinois is not a good team, though. This is not a good MAC team by any means.
Mhm.
They're middle of the pack MAC. I didn't mean to rhyme like that, but I did.
That was good. That was
Thank you.
eloquent.
Thank you. SMU, I have at 9. They beat Boise or not Boise. They lost to Birmingham Young BYU, and but overall, like they didn't do anything to move them down. So I mean, they destroyed Cal, but I also didn't think that was enough to move them up ahead of Notre Dame or anything like that. Especially since Notre Dame took down USC,
Mm.
which I think is a better team than Cal. Miami, for me, Miami lost to Syracuse. It wasn't the worst loss in the world, but I didn't want to move Miami down too much because I think some people are moving Miami down too much just because of when their losses came. And I don't
Mhm.
like when that happens. Like, I will reseed teams, even if they win, I will reseed them like I did Georgia because I don't want a loss at the wrong time of the year to move you too far down, right? Like
Yeah.
Ohio State lost to Oregon earlier in the year. That was good for them, but they were able to be back up to second place. Um, Sometimes it's not just about if you lose or not, it's about when you
Yep.
lose. And so I didn't want to dock Miami too much for when they lost rather than who they lost to, because I do
Yeah, that's
believe
fair.
Syracuse is a good football team.
Yep.
Then Boise State and Alabama stayed the same for me. They didn't really do anything to knock them off where they were. So, Zach, I'll let you take it from here. What team or two are we different on that you want to discuss?
Um, that's a good question.
Notre Dame is there, Ohio State
Yeah,
is there,
I
Georgia's there.
I think Notre Dame is hard, and I think your rationale is superb on Notre Dame, despite the fact that I am very different on them. Um, I think maybe
I mean, I
where
can see where you're coming from with Notre Dame. Like
yeah,
stats wise, like they fit all the statistics. They come off playing Navy and they destroy a Florida State team. Like it's not easy coming off of playing a Naval Academy team
yeah,
with the way they run their offense, and they destroy Florida State. Only allow 3 points.
yeah,
They come off the Army game, and it's a close game with USC, but they eventually win that game by 2 scores. And so, like in USC, we talked about it. Like they presented a threat that Notre
yep,
Dame had not seen all year with the passing offense. Now
yeah.
they were able to meet that threat and beat them by 2 scores. So give them that credit. But like I said, I just can't put them in the top 5 because of Northern Illinois. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I think that's fair. And I don't it's funny that the one probably I actually maybe disagree with you on most, and this is gonna make me sound like a SEC honk, is Georgia. Because it's funny, I make fun of Georgia for almost losing to Kentucky and almost losing to Georgia Tech. I think as I'm looking at their whole body of work, I would just say they actually were less. I thought they had more close calls than that. I mean, they bludgeoned Clemson. I mean, it was I think 6-3 at half, so like it wasn't great, but they pulled away 134-3. Mississippi State, I don't think they tried in that game, but they still won by 10. It's Mississippi State. They stink. But like I thought Auburn, they were sluggish, but they still won by 18. There's, Florida didn't look great, but they pulled away and won by 2 scores.
That was also after DJ Lagway got hurt.
It's true, but I just got done saying that DJ Lagway is not worth 24 points. I'm not sure he's worth 14.
Right. I'm not saying he's worth 24
Yeah.
points, but the guy gets hurt and your offense stalls out. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just saying it's interesting because I think my perception before looking at the scores is like Georgia's been in a lot of close games. And then I actually look at the scores and I'm like, they have not been a lot of close games. Like Georgia Tech they should have lost that game. Like they really should have lost that game. If they actually call targeting,
yeah.
then it's a loss. But I do think you do have to give them credit for being resilient, which is something that Ohio State was not this past week. And I can appreciate what you're saying about Michigan with Ohio State. And I will say this. I think Michigan deserves a lot of credit. And I think they have had the 15th hardest schedule in college football, according to Sagarin. So like they're 7-5, but for all the people saying SEC is so hard, I mean, Michigan's had a hard schedule, and that's a big reason why they're 7-5. But also, their quarterback's terrible. Like the Jack Sawyer interception was not Jack Sawyer being good.
Mm-hmm.
It was Davis. And again, Davis Ward's a great story in college football. He's not a good quarterback, and they got beat by that guy. Like,
yeah, I mean, he only threw for 62 yards or something like that. So
yeah,
minimal beating from him. But yes, you are correct.
And so I think that's why it's hard for me when you make the points about Georgia and then have Ohio State in that spot. I'm like, I'm not saying that I would disagree with it. It's just hard. I think maybe I look at it differently and be like, man.
Yeah. I look at that Georgia Tech game, and to me, even though Georgia came out and won that game, they maybe call me a homer, I guess, homer for the Big Ten, but I think a close loss to Michigan is more impressive than a close loss to Georgia Tech.
I would agree.
I don't see the NFL talent on that Georgia Tech team that I see on the Michigan team. And I also saw Georgia throw everything they had at Georgia Tech. Their players just didn't perform. They threw everything they had, and their players just did not perform well in a few areas. Ohio State's players, they did not perform poorly in every area, but like a lot of them that were performing well didn't always get a chance because Ryan Day got in his own head with the Michigan situation, was like, I can't, I got to run the ball to be tough against this team, which if you wanted to use that as a reason to dock them lower, I would understand that. I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but I would understand it. But then I also when I say close games, Florida to me was a close game, even though they came out winning that one by 2 touchdowns. I still think it was a close game because it was close until DJ Lagway got hurt. Like the quarterback on the other team gets hurt. You benefited from that. Not saying they did it on purpose, obviously, but that was a home game. Home game against Mississippi State. They only win that by 10 points. Like Toledo beat Mississippi State better than Georgia did. I'm not the most transitive property guy in the world, but I do think at a certain point, like if Mississippi State gets dominated by Toledo, Georgia should dominate them as well at some point in that game. And they only beat them by 10 points. Kentucky, like you only scored 13 points on Kentucky. We're docking Ohio State for only scoring 13 points or only scoring 10 points on Michigan. Why is nobody docking Georgia for only scoring 13 points on Kentucky? Like now their defense did only let Kentucky score 12, but still, like it's another situation where it's like, oh, we see the W, so it's fine. But for me, I see the W and I'm like, okay, that's fine. But I also see the score and I'm like, Georgia only scored 13 on Kentucky. Like we really think Kentucky has a better defense than Michigan?
Well, I think, to be fair, I think you got to credit Georgia for not running the ball into 2 first-round tackles 50 times in a game. Like
I can credit Kirby Smart for that. I don't know if I credit Georgia for that.
Well, but coaching malpractice.
I see what you're saying. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I think what we're maybe both alluding to is that every team is flawed in this whole thing. Like there's no, and I think that's become cliche. Like there's no dominant team. I am very curious to see Oregon Penn State play out because I think it's very possible that either one, Oregon has a tougher game with Penn State and some flaws are exposed, or we're going to see that the computers have been wrong about Oregon and they're going to race to a victory. I tend to think that actually Penn State is going to keep it close. But I am curious if Oregon boat races Penn State, easily the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. And I'm very curious to see that because to see what happens there. But I'm not so sure that's what we're going to see on Saturday. But yeah, everybody else, I'm like everybody's saying, well, SEC teams would run the playoff. I'm like, based on what?
Yeah.
But then I see what Ohio State just put up, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Like if you coach like that, you're gonna get beat by Boise.
That's true.
Like, you know what? The game plan for Ohio State against Boise, take everyone but Ashton Genty away and see if we can prove we're tough.
I don't want to prove anything about being tough again. I'd like to just move on from the prove you're tough.
Please do.
Yeah. All right, Zach. I think we covered things really well. Let's end the show with a game. How about that? You want to play a game really fast?
Okay, real quick.
I didn't tell you about this game, so you're gonna be surprised by it. So let's play the ESPN FPI percentage chance to win the national championship game. I'm gonna give you 2 teams. You tell me which one has a higher percentage chance to win the national championship. You ready?
Let's do it.
Indiana, Alabama.
Indiana.
Yep. Indiana, SMU.
Indiana.
Oregon.
Indiana, Oregon.
Yeah. Penn State, Oregon.
Penn State.
Because
believe it or not, I think they're favored. Penn State's favored FPI in the matchup on Saturday.
Oh, are they? Well, Penn State is 9th in FPI and Oregon is 6th in FPI.
Okay. I thought I saw that Penn State was like 51-49.
Yeah.
Let me look it up real quick.
All right, we'll keep going with this.
The matchup predictor, 53.8% in favor of
Penn
State.
Oh, okay. The matchup predictor. Yeah. Okay, you're right. Yeah. That's interesting. All right, a couple more. Ohio State, Georgia.
Ohio State,
Notre Dame.
Ohio State.
Notre Dame.
Oh, I should have known that.
Notre Dame has a 2% higher chance.
Yeah.
And then do you know which team has the best odds right now or best chance right now? Percentage chance?
I think it's Texas.
Texas by 8.6 percentage points over Notre Dame, who is second.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's Tech. I think it's Texas, Notre Dame, Ohio State, according to FPI.
Yep, the whole thing: Texas, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Georgia, Penn State, Oregon, Tennessee, Indiana, SMU, Alabama, Boise State, and Clemson. Those are all the teams with a 1% or higher chance to win it all. Arizona State, 0.5.
I feel like there's a lot of disrespect for the Ducks. And I know I said I'm expecting a close game on Saturday.
Just don't like the Ducks. They just
and
computers and Ducks. They don't get along. It's like cats and dogs.
I think at the Big Ten championship game, the Duck should take a computer and smash it with a sledgehammer.
Let's see it. That'll be a great halftime show. Just the Duck going out there, Donkey Konging it everywhere.
Yeah, and then the Duck should fight the Nittany Lion.
Oh boy, we've gone off the rails here.
Let them fight. Do it.
Thank you so much for watching our top 12 video, everybody. We will come out with something else next week. I don't know. We're trying to find a thing here. I'm sure we'll come out with something after the bowl or the championship games and stuff like that. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.